Today, we are going to talk about communicating and engaging with legislators. And I did just want to note, for those of you who might not recognize the senator on that picture, that is State Senator John Hoffman. And he is the state senator that was shot along with his wife the same night that Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark were murdered. I love this picture of Senator Hoffman. It shows his character and personality to a T. And, you know, I think I hope to see that same character and personality this next legislative session. So the objectives of today's presentation is, one, to help you understand the value and impact of advocacy, help you build confidence when engaging with legislators, help you hear directly from a legislator on how advocacy influences policy and their decisions, and also help you prepare a little bit for how to have an effective conversation with your legislator. So there's a number of barriers, I think, that people think of when they are going to reach out to their legislator. And I want to touch on those a bit. The first is government can be really frustrating. It's frustrating for me sometimes. It can seem really complicated and it can seem hard to navigate. And my point in bringing this up is whether it's complicated or hard to navigate is you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry about the complexities of the legislative process or how the sausage making works. That's my role as the lobbyist, and that's where my experience comes in, is I understand all of the nuances of how a bill becomes a law. I understand what I need to do to help the organization navigate the process and move forward with their legislative priorities. And legislators don't expect you to understand all the nuts and bolts of how the process works. They may use some time when they meet with you to talk about the process to help you understand it, but they don't expect you to know it when you meet with them. It's the same as if, you know, I have a basic understanding of special education. I have a pretty basic understanding of how things work in school districts, and I do my best to kind of understand some of the issues that we are working on. But I really rely on all of you to be the experts for me on special ed. And that's the same as, you know, you rely on me to be the expert on the legislative process. And you don't need to know the legislative process to talk to your legislators and advocate on issues that are important to you. The next is people have other demands and live very busy lives. I know your role as special ed, working in special ed in school districts. Your days are beyond probably anything that I can understand, and you have a lot of different demands for your attention. My point in bringing this up is connecting with legislators and being an advocate doesn't have to be a full-time job like my lobbying role. It is a few times a year reaching out to your legislators to share information, build a relationship with them, ask them to support or oppose an issue that is of interest to you or to your district or to MASE. It is a few emails a year. It might be a request to come visit a program or a request to meet. It doesn't have to be every month. It doesn't have to be every week, but it does need to be, I think, at some certain touch points throughout the year. And I'll talk about ways that you can connect in a little bit. The next is, I know that people often don't feel like their voice can make a difference. And sometimes it feels like they might not respond to you, or you might not see, they might not change their mind right away.
Out regularly with invitations.
If you can make sure you're on mute, please. Thank you. Legislators, so you might not see the impact of your conversation, but I hear and see every session the importance of when legislators hear from people back in their district. I hear when I'm sitting in committees or meeting with legislators or watching debates on the House floor, legislators communicate and say, I've heard back from my special ed director or my superintendent or my teacher about these particular issues. And because of that, I'm voting this way or that. So you don't always see the direct results of your communications, but it does come through into the decisions that are made. And sometimes you might not be able to change your legislator's mind on the first visit or second visit, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, but we will never change people's minds or educate people if we don't reach out to them and make an effort. If you don't speak up, others will, and you might not like the outcome. You know, sometimes laws are passed And when legislators don't hear about concerns, they don't think it's an issue. And so it's important to raise concerns. And then the last one is, I hear we have a lobbyist, and I work very hard to represent MASE and to understand MASE's issues and help you find ways to advocate on your behalf. But legislators really like to hear from people back in their district. They like to hear from people who work in their schools, who can help them understand the issues at a much more detailed level than maybe I'm able to do. Plus, they also are accountable to people back in their community. And I'll talk a little bit later about, I know many of you probably work in a school district but live in a different district, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But legislators aren't accountable to lobbyists. They're accountable to their constituents back home. They are the people that can elect them into office or unelect them into office. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what my role is as the lobbyist for MASE. So as the lobbyist for MASE, I help amplify your voice with policymakers. I help ensure that policymakers hear and understand all sides of the issue. And then I connect you to share information. I connect legislators with MASE to share information and develop solutions. So often I will hear from a legislator about, I have a legislative idea that impacts special ed. I'd like to hear more from special ed directors about what they think about this proposal, what questions they would have, what concerns they would have. I also connect MASE with policymakers. You know, MASE every year does a legislative platform, and I work to advance the legislative platform. So I connect the MASE tri-chairs with key legislators as we're trying to advance legislative issues. I help guide clients through the process. I do trainings such as this. I help MASE and other clients understand throughout the legislative process what's happening, what are the key issues that the legislature is tackling, what are the key education issues, what are the education committees doing, what are all the different things that are happening that might impact your role as special ed directors in school districts. As your lobbyist, I also help you know when is the best way to engage effectively in advocacy. You know, for instance, if there's an issue that we have of concern, reaching out to your legislator to say vote no on something in July is not a good use of your time. The legislators probably won't even pay attention to it because they're not in session until the winter. So I help you determine when is the best time, and what is the best way to engage. So for instance, if there is an issue that we are concerned about, and I'll use the issue of seclusion. One of the things I've been doing over the course of the summer is working with the MASE members on the seclusion working group, and what is the best way to help them educate the members of the working group on issues of seclusion, rather than having everyone reach out to all legislators about seclusion. We're doing it in a way that's targeted. And then lastly, as your lobbyist, I help track policy and legislative activity, and I keep you informed throughout the legislative process of what's happening on issues that MASE cares about. So a little bit about Minnesota legislators. So first of all, legislators are regular people and lead everyday lives outside of the Capitol. Our legislature is considered a part-time legislature, and what that means is that the legislative session is only in part-time. So depending on the year, in the odd numbers years when they pass a budget, they are in session from January through May. In the even numbered years, they don't have to pass a state budget, so they typically meet for a much shorter period. So for instance, this year is the even numbered year. They don't go into session until the middle of February. So outside of their role as a legislator, they have their regular lives. Many of them have full-time jobs outside of their legislative responsibilities. Some are teachers, some are nurses, some are doctors, some own businesses, some are in law enforcement. They are a very good, I think, cross-representation of people in our community, you know, in our friend network. Some are, you know, project managers. They have families that they are trying to manage and they have kids that are going to childcare. They have kids that are in college. They are everyday people, just like the rest of us. And while the legislature is considered a part-time legislature, that's only because of session. Really, the work of the legislator, even though they may have jobs outside of the Capitol, they still hear from constituents. They still do legislative work throughout the year on top of all of their other regular responsibilities through their job or family or their other, community interests and things that they're involved in. Whether or not we agree with the legislators' politics, they all work hard to get elected. It's not easy to run for public office. They have to raise about $80,000 to $100,000. It depends on how competitive the race is. And many legislators go door to door during the summer and fall, even in the non-election years, to try to talk to voters. And that's not easy work. And regardless of their political affiliation or some of the decisions that we agree or disagree with, they do want to represent their communities as best they can. Legislators have a general knowledge on a wide range of issues. So many bring to them their experience in their private lives, whether they've been, dependent upon what their profession is, what their personal interests are, or what was their role before they came to the legislature. Did they serve on a county commission board? Were they a city council member? Were they a mayor? Were they a school board member? We often have other elected officials from other offices run for the state legislature. We've had very few, other than teachers, we've had very few educators or administrators serve in office. In my time, there has been, I think, 2 superintendents that have been in office. But they bring their own experiences and their own issues to the Capitol. And so they also, serving in the legislature, they have a general knowledge on a wide range of issues. They might serve on 2 to 3 committees. So while they may be on the Education Finance Committee, they might also serve on the Environment Committee or the Tax Committee or the Elections Committee. And so they know a little bit about a lot. As I mentioned, they have their own policy interests. They have other things, they might, even though they might be a teacher serving on the Education Finance Committee, they might have other issues that they're advocating for that are important to their community. So say they're from South Washington County and so the 3M issue with PFAS is a big issue in that community. So maybe they're also focused on policy issues such as that. Each of them respond to information uniquely. Some like email. Some would, once you get to know them, they might give you their cell phone and might say, anytime you need to reach me, give me a text. Some might want a lot of information. Some might want just give me the key bullets. I would imagine most legislators do want just, tell me exactly what, I need to know. Give me a few talking points I need to remember. And then lastly, they have enormous demands on their time. As I mentioned, they have their regular life outside of the legislature. Many of them have regular jobs. And then when they're in session, they're handling all of that while doing their legislative responsibilities with session. And when they are in session, their schedule really is not their own. They spend probably about 6 hours a day, I would say, in committees. It depends on the number of committees they have. But then they also have floor sessions. And in between that, they are trying to schedule as many meetings as they can with different organizations and constituents. They do prioritize meetings with their direct constituents, but if they're a chair of a committee, they might need to meet with a number of different advocacy organizations. So for instance, with MASE, the tri-chairs and I will meet with the chairs of the Education Finance and Education Policy Committees. So they are trying to get in as many meetings throughout the day that they can, because that's how they learn and that's how they get to know what's happening on issues that might be before them or issues of importance to their constituents and in their communities. So they might only have 15 minutes for a meeting. They're not being rude. They just are trying to meet with as many people as possible during the day. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. So why advocacy matters. I've talked a little bit about this, but first and foremost, legislators need information and expect to hear from their constituents. They want to hear from their constituents. They want to hear ideas. They want to know if their thinking on issues is in line with what might be relevant to their community. Now, they might not always agree. Their political values might be in disagreement, but they still want to know and hear and learn. Legislators also, as I mentioned, they have enormous demands on their time. So it's hard for them to learn about a lot of issues except when they're in committee. So it does help them increase their awareness and knowledge on issues when they meet with their constituents and advocacy organizations. Legislators like to connect issues to real people. They want to know, what is the impact of their decisions? Am I making a difference in my community? Are people concerned about an issue? Do they support the issue? And they, I would also say most legislators are probably extroverts, and they probably get a lot of energy from being with people. I mean, that's why they serve. They want to do right by their community. And so they also tend to like to meet with people. I mentioned this already. If you don't speak up, others will. I mean, we might not like the outcome. And then lastly, you can have an impact and be a resource. So what are the different ways to engage with legislators? First of all, you can visit them at their Capitol office. I'll talk a little bit about Advocacy Day in a bit, but MASE Day at the Capitol is one way to do that. But if you aren't able to come to MASE Day at the Capitol, you are able to reach out to your legislator during the session and say, I'm interested in coming and talking to you about an issue. Now, during session, they would prefer to meet with you if there's a specific issue that is going to be before them, but they are happy to meet with you. And you can come, most of the meetings at the Capitol, at their Capitol office, are during session. During the interim, they're usually back home in their districts. But you can come and meet with them at the Capitol for about 15 minutes, tell them a little bit about yourself, tell them a little bit about your district, the issues of concern in your area, and then and I'll talk a little bit more too about kind of what's next after that. I mentioned participate in days at the Capitol. MASE does have a day at the Capitol. It's in March. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But that's a great way for you to come and be with your peers who are also having similar conversations. The information is also, we provide all of the information to you about what is in the MASE platform. What are the specific bills and issues that the legislature is tackling that session? What are some of the broad talking points that we've identified on some of those issues? And it gives you an opportunity to advocate on MASE's priorities with your local legislators. You can host events or visits and meetings in the district. During the interim, legislators tend to have more time. During the session, you probably only have 15 minutes, but during the interim, they might have an hour to come. If there's a program you'd like them to see, or you could have them come meet with your advisory council. I know some school districts do legislative breakfasts or coffees where they invite their entire delegation to come and meet and talk about different issues. You can attend your legislator's town hall, or some legislators have like monthly coffee hours, or again, town hall or specific events that the elected official puts on. Those tend to happen more during the session, and it gives the public an opportunity to come and hear from them about what are the issues the legislature is tackling. But it also gives you an opportunity to get to know them a little bit, to meet them, introduce yourself, get their contact information.
That's good and bad.
If you're, again, a reminder, if you're not on mute. Another way to connect with legislators is you can connect with them at community events. If you are part of your Rotary or your Lions Club or your local Chamber of Commerce, if they have public events, you can, if you you see them at those events, it's a great opportunity for you to meet them and introduce yourself to them and say, I'm interested in talking with you more about some issues. Can I reach out to your office? And they'll say, oh, absolutely, email my legislative assistant. And it's just a good way to begin building a relationship. You can contact them about a specific issue. You can email them or call them. I'll talk a little bit in a bit about how to connect. But you can just email them and say, I have concerns about this specific piece of legislation, or I wanted to share some information about the district. You can do that via email or a phone call. Now, if there is an issue of interest to MASE that the legislature is addressing that we think is important for legislators to hear from special ed directors around Minnesota, we do have a advocacy system that makes it easy for you to send a communication to your legislator. You are able to send something to all of the legislators in your school district area. We provide a message for you to send. We include the main talking points of concern or support for the legislator. You can change the message if you'd like. You can add some more context about what might be happening in your district or how it would impact your program to the message. And you just click a link and then it sends the email directly to your legislators. Now, there's a lot of different ways to communicate with legislators by email, and I will talk about that in a bit. But this way, using our system, is a very good way to send direct information to your legislators. And then lastly, you can involve yourself in your professional organization. And more specifically, if you could also get involved in your professional organization's legislative committee. By being a member with MASE, you receive all of the different legislative updates that I provide during the legislative session on a weekly basis. I also provide a few times throughout session, I provide virtual updates that help you get information. If you are involved with the legislative committee, you get to help craft the legislative priorities. You also get to provide feedback on topics of concern that might be coming up that I need direct feedback on during the legislative session. You also, by being part of the legislative committee, you could become a resource for me and the tri-chairs when we need someone to come testify. We have a group of folks on the legislative committee that we might reach out to who have expertise or interest in an area and to come testify on issues. And if you are asked to testify, we provide all kinds of support to help you know what to expect with testifying, help you prepare, and help you navigate that process. You would not be doing it alone. You would get all the help that you need from me and the tri-chairs. So what are the different ways you can connect? So you've decided you want to invite your legislator to come to your advisory council, or you want to email them information or connect with them on information. What are the different ways? Email is really the preferred communication nowadays. I use email to request an invitation to a meeting. I use email to relay information about, etc. And a reminder, if you're not on mute, if you could please put yourself on mute. Sorry. And as I mentioned, so legislators do get quite a few emails. So it is really important for them to understand that they are getting an email from someone that has a relevant connection to their district. So either you work in a school district in the area that they represent, or you are a constituent of that legislator. So it is important when you do email them to communicate that. And I'll include some more information later about what to include in those communications. But now sometimes you will hear, oh, form emails don't work. And what they mean is sometimes advocacy organizations will do a mass call to email every legislator. Now, it makes no sense for someone who might be in Red Wing to email someone who represents the Iron Range. There's no connection to that legislator's district. So when they say form emails don't work, that's what they mean. But an email from someone that has a connection to their district is really the best way to communicate. And I'll show you in a little bit where you can find that information. Phone calls are somewhat effective if you really are just relaying information about how you have some concerns, list out the concerns. But if you want a response, you probably aren't going to get one. And most likely, if you call your legislator on their legislative office phone number, you're going to get a voicemail. Now, once you've built a relationship with your legislator and you're able, legislators fairly often, once they know you and have a relationship and know you can provide them information, legislators will often share their personal cell, they will share their cell phone. So if you do have their cell phone, it's a really great way to just send them a text of, I have some information I'm going to email you, or I'd like to talk with you. Can we schedule some time for us to have a quick phone call? And it's often that you will be able to communicate with your own legislator once you have a relationship with them and are able to get that information. And again, you can call their legislative offices and leave a message, but you most unlikely will talk to any human being, which really isn't much different than our normal lives. You can also mail through snail mail information. To me, I use the mail, U.S. Postal Service mail, to send personal thank you notes. So let's say you've come to MASE Day at the Capitol, or they've come to visit you in the district and have seen a program, or came to speak to your advisory council. I would send them a handwritten thank you note card. Those get noticed, and I know they get noticed because I try to send personal thank you notes. And legislators often say to me, hey, thank you for that note. So I would use the U.S. Postal Service for things such as personal mail. If you have a document that's so big that you want to mail, to be quite honest, they probably won't read it, but they will pay attention to a very short thank you note. So now you've decided, I'm coming to MASE Day at the Capitol, or the legislator's coming to my district. What do I need to do to be prepared? First of all, it's important to know a little bit about your legislator's background. And later on, I'll go on to the website to show you where to get that information. You can get some basic information on the legislative website. There, you can see what committees they serve on. Another good thing to know is, what is their political affiliation? Are they a Democrat or are they a Republican? Now, you're not going to get into, hopefully, the legislators won't get into a partisan discussion with you. They know that's not why you're there. That's for them and their counterparts to have those political debates on partisan issues. But it is good to know, what is their political affiliation? If they're a Republican, they might view an issue from a different angle than, say, a Democrat would. And again, what committees do they serve on? Does your member serve on the Education, Finance, or Education Policy Committee, or are they not on any of those committees? If they're not on any of those committees, they may not have a lot of context or information on education issues, especially related to special ed. That's not always true, because just because they might not serve on a committee, they may have had a child, or some may have been part of the special ed system themselves. But it is good to know if they are on the Education Finance Committees, or are they the chair of the Education Finance or Education Policy Committee. You can get to see what bills they've authored and co-authored, and you're not expected to remember that or go into any details, but it is just, I think information is always good to have, and it is good to see, like, did they author bills related to education? There on the legislative website, you can read or sign up for committees. It's not committees, I'm sorry. You can read or sign up for their newsletter. And that is a good way for you to get to know them. They will provide you information about what is the legislature up to that week during the legislative session. What are the things they are working on, etc. The other thing I do before I meet with the legislator is I will often Google their name, and I'll try to find their candidate webpage. And again, not because we're getting involved in partisan politics or elections, but you get to know a little bit more about them. You get to see a little bit more about their background. And I just think information is good to know. So for instance, I learned when I was meeting with a new senator that the senator was from North Dakota, not far from where I grew up. So I was able to make a one-on-one connection with that senator. You also hear what issues that they care about from their legislative website. You can check out their social media if you are so inclined to see. Many will use their social media pages to talk about their legislative work. And then lastly, ask your network if they have relationships with the legislator. So check within your school district with the people that you work. Do they know their legislator? Do they have a personal relationship? You know, I learned, this was a number of years ago, but I learned that someone who worked for a school district was cousins to the Education Finance Committee chair. Well, that was a really great connection to make because they were able to help get a personal connection with that legislator on an issue. And that legislator listened a little differently than maybe when I was at that legislator's door, or someone, one of the, like the executive director was talking with them. So it's always, you know, does anyone on your special ed advisory council have a personal relationship with the legislator? It just helps you make connections in a different way than, say, if you just came to the Capitol. I'm going to just pause here to see if there are any questions in the chat before I move on. And I'm also not trying to be distracted, but I know I have Senator Judy Seeberger will be joining us today. So I want to make sure she's not on yet.
I have a Zoom webinar I can hop into here.
Okay. I didn't see any questions in the chat. Does anyone have any questions they want to just take a chance to share now before I move on to the next slide? Okay. Great. Okay, so you've gotten a little bit of background information. You know a little bit about your legislator. What else do you want to be thinking of doing? So obviously plan for logistics. You want to set up the meeting in advance. Now, if you participate in MASE Day at the Capitol, we make hopefully scheduling the meeting a lot easier because we use our advocacy system where you can send an email to your legislator requesting a meeting and then work directly with their legislative assistant to get that meeting set up. And we set the timing of that in a way that's appropriate for the legislative schedule. Now, if you're trying to connect with them outside of the legislative session, you know, you're
Valerie, you muted somehow.
Can you hear me? I got a note that my internet is unstable. Okay. Is it better?
It is, yep, thanks.
Okay. My apologies. I was at the office, so I wouldn't have to worry about that today. So usually it would take a few weeks to get the meeting set up. You do need to give yourself advance to get the meeting scheduled. You also have to be flexible with the timing and location. Now, if you're inviting your legislator to attend a specific event, you can't be flexible. But if you're just trying to connect with them, you want outside of the MASE Day at the Capitol, you're going to connect with them. Try to be flexible with the timing and the location. You know this, confirm the appointment and be punctual. And sometimes if you can't meet with the legislator, they may ask to meet with their relevant staff. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but sometimes during session, it does. There was last session, the tri-chairs and I ended up meeting with the staff person because the senator wasn't available. They're not trying to be rude or dismissive. They just are pulled in a lot of different directions. Okay, so now you have done a little background on your legislator. You have finalized all the details about the meeting. You want to now kind of prepare for your discussion. So first of all, you want to think about, okay, what is your goal? Do you want to raise awareness on your issue or concern? Do you want to show what is happening in your community or your program or for your students? Do you want to ask the legislator to support or oppose a specific bill? Or do you want to get to know the legislator a little bit? Now, if you are participating in MASE Day at the Capitol, we provide all of this kind of information for you. We provide the platform, we provide some talking points, we provide maybe a little bit of the information about what to ask. But if it's outside of MASE Day at the Capitol, these are important things to think about. Some things to remember, you want to give your message in a positive way. I know that there are all kinds of challenges and frustrations, but it's important to paint the message of in a positive way that is solution oriented. It's good to talk about what the challenges are, but do it in a way that gives the legislator an option of how they can help solve the problem. So for instance, I'm just going to use the per pupil formula as an example because it's the easy one. Instead of a superintendent going to a legislator saying the formula is way behind inflation and you haven't done enough to increase the formula, not that a superintendent would do this, but I'm just giving a simple explanation. It's better to say, if the formula were increased by X%, these are the different programs we can offer. These are the different things we can do for our students. These are the different things we can do for our teachers. And then say, the challenge with the formula not keeping up is we are not able to do those things. The next item to remember is stay on message and be succinct. Especially if you're coming to the Capitol during session, you will probably only have 15 minutes, maybe less. And so it is important, you want to, be cordial, say hello, pleasantries, but it is important to say, this is why I'm here. These are the things I want to talk to you about, and these are the reasons why it's important. State as many facts as you can. Legislators like facts. I shouldn't say as many. State the key facts that are relevant to the issue. And give a personal example or story to provide a characterization of the issue so people can understand its impact in people's lives. I just want to make sure I don't see Senator Seeberger on here. Nope. Okay. Okay, so when you've done all the preparation, you have your narrative, kind of your elevator pitch figured out, what do you do when you actually meet with the legislator or email them? First of all, you want to share your connection with the legislator's district. Why should they be paying attention to you? Do you work in a school district they represent, or are you a constituent in their district? Now, if you work in one school district and live in another, you get to talk to more legislators. But it's important to they want to know, why do they need to be paying attention to you? Now, if you're from Moorhead and you're coming to talk to a legislator in St. Paul, you're probably not going to get the meeting. But if you're in Moorhead and you're trying to talk to your legislator, you want to talk to your legislator that represents the Moorhead area, they will pay attention to you. Explain why the issues are important to their community, or in your case, students or families. They want to know, why should I be paying attention to this? And they want to know why you are the right messenger, and two, why should they be paying attention to it? And then let the legislator know what they can do to support your issue. So for instance, sometimes a specific ask is, we'd like you to vote no, we'd like you to help us not advance this legislation, we'd like you to vote yes. But sometimes it might be, I'd like you to get to know the issue a little better by coming to see a program, or coming to meet with our special ed advisory council, or coming to meet with some of the special ed staff in my district. They always want to know what they can do. Do they need to learn something? Do they need to pay attention to something? Or do they need to vote for something or get something? Some other things to remember with legislators. First of all, stay away from jargon, acronyms, and technical details. And I know that's hard in the education world because we have a lot of details, a lot of laws and rules, a lot of acronyms, and a lot of jargon. But legislators, even if they serve on the education committee, don't always understand or remember the level of detail that you might think they would. They get a lot of information coming at them. So it is important when you meet with them to just kind of level set, say, don't use jargon, don't use, ADSIS. A legislator does not know what ADSIS is. So you have to be able to briefly explain what ADSIS is. They might get stuck on even, we use SPED as a shortened word for special education. They might even get stuck on that. So just always give the information in a simple way that doesn't have a lot of technical details and that stays away from jargon. Remember that you aren't expected to know everything. If they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, it is perfectly fine to say, I don't have that information right now. I will get it to you later. It's better to do that than give them kind of partial information or information that might be partially correct. Bring a handout with you.
Valerie,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Senator Seeberger has joined.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to stop share. Hi, Senator Seeberger.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I am not seeing you. Are you on camera?
I am.
There you are.
Here I am.
Okay. Wonderful. Great. Well, I'm going to just shift gears. Okay. Welcome, Senator Seeberger. Thanks so much for your time today.
Of course.
For the MASE members on the call here, Senator Seeberger, and I'll let you do a little introduction, but I have worked very closely with Senator Seeberger on an issue of interest to MASE, and that is the issue of seclusion. And I'll let you talk a little bit about that if you'd like. But I asked Senator Seeberger to join us today because I think she does an excellent job in the state Senate. She's a hard worker and she's been a very, I think, effective member in the Senate, and she cares about issues as it relates to special education. And so, Senator Seeberger, please introduce yourself. And then I have a few questions to start up the conversation. And then I want to leave it up to some other folks, if they'd like to ask some questions. So let's just start quick with the introduction.
I'm Judy Seeberger. I'm the state senator for District 41, which is encompasses communities on the east side of the metro, Lake Elmo, Afton, the Lakeland Cities, Cottage Grove, Hastings. My background is as a trial lawyer. That's what I started out as. Then I became a mom of a kid with some very complex and unique needs. So that kind of changed my trajectory a little bit. And because I wasn't sure whether he'd be successful in school, and I wasn't sure if I was going to have to homeschool or not, I went back to school and got my teaching license. I'm a Tier 4, 5 through 12 English language arts teacher in the state of Minnesota, and have a master's in teaching. And I'm also because I joined the fire department, because that's just what you do. I'm a volunteer paramedic firefighter with Lower St. Croix Valley Fire Department. And then I got elected senator. So clearly I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I think in terms of special education, my son, who I think, Valerie, you saw him yesterday. Were you there for his?
I was there, yeah.
Yeah. So my boy, he's 20 now. And he made a guest appearance at the seclusion working group yesterday to speak to his experience using seclusion throughout his academic career. He was in a setting 4 school for most of his education. I am happy to report, however, he was able to transition from, he was in Quora, setting 4 through Northeast Metro 916, and was able to sort of transition through his high school years and graduated from Stillwater Area High School in a setting 2. And yesterday, to my surprise and delight, was willing and able and very informative in coming to speak at our seclusion work group and talk about his experience in seclusion. I thought he did a pretty good job. I'm his mom. So anyway, happy to be here.
He did a great job, and it was nice to see him. I walked by him in the hallway, and I thought, "Oh, that's Senator Seeberger's son." So
It was great. It was great.
yeah.
Good. Did you see him?
I did. Yeah, it was excellent.
Yeah,
Well,
and I really have to give credit to the special education team that really supported him throughout his schooling and education years. He said something yesterday that I thought was really compelling. He said, if it wasn't for the people that supported me, I'd either be in jail or dead. And I think he's right. So we had some really hard years. And those experiences actually do kind of inform my work here at the Capitol. So I'm happy to be a part of this discussion and happy to support our specialized education educators out there, because really without you guys, my boy's path would have been dramatically different.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Senator Seeberger. We're very lucky to have you where you are. So I'll start with a question or two and then see if others want to ask a question. So first of all, why is it important for legislators to hear from their constituents?
Because we don't know everything. We got to know what's important to folks out in the community and things that we need to be working on. We get approached by, I came to the Senate with an idea of what this job would be. I was wrong. But there are things that are important to me. This special education and the needs of our high needs students is something I'm emotionally invested in. It's the only topic I'm emotionally invested in. I have other things that are important to me that I kind of have ideas about, but unless somebody tells me that there's a need, I'm not necessarily going to know.
Next question. So what are the different ways legislators like to engage with their constituents? Is it only through visits at the Capitol, or are there other ways they can engage?
People kind of have different preferences. Usually, if you're unsure what would be the most effective way to engage with the senator or state rep, a phone call or an email to their legislative assistant is a really good start. In-person meetings are great. Zoom meetings are great. If it's not a complex issue, sometimes an email might be a good way to start the conversation. But if it's something that you really got to kind of dig into, or there's specific action that you really do want the legislator to take, either a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting is the best way to make sure that information gets across.
What about visits during the interim?
It depends on your legislator and kind of what their schedule is during the interim. If you can, sometimes those are what I kind of enjoy during the interim is maybe a coffee shop visit or a quick Zoom call. I'm not always at the Capitol. Well, I am now because we're gearing up for session, but during interim, I'm not always here at the Capitol, and particularly those legislators in Greater Minnesota, they're not making the drive here. A Zoom meeting works great, or if you happen to be in their neck of the woods, a coffee meeting or lunch meeting sometimes is also a good opportunity to have that discussion.
Great. Well, I have a few more questions, but I want to see if anyone on the call, on the Zoom here, has a question they'd like to share.
I guess I'll go. I'm sorry.
Okay. No,
I guess
go
I'll
ahead.
go. And and thank you so much for actually joining us. I got a number of questions because everything is going full speed ahead. So I'm just going to ask that question that everyone probably is wondering. How does our current special education funding formula account for difference in student needs and services? Because even when I'm looking at the Medicaid, MA and all these different things, I'm still wondering, how is that going to support us in the future for next year and the year before, to wait for our students with the severe disabilities that require more service minutes. So I guess my question is, again, how does the current special education funding formula account for difference in student needs and their services, or will?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't serve on the Education Finance Committee, unfortunately, and haven't done a deep dive into that topic. Val, Can you help?
I think maybe that's a question that we can chat offline. I think Senator Seeberger's expertise, I mean, she clearly has a very good understanding of seclusion and restrictive procedures. But I think her expertise here today is about why it's important to connect personally with legislators and do legislative advocacy. But Dr. Robinson, I'm happy for Aaron and I to talk with you and maybe the tri-chairs to try to help navigate some of that.
And if there, I'll say this, I know that there is never enough money for special ed ever. And that's an area that I think people, if you haven't been in the trenches or don't have experience with it, it's easy for other people in the legislature to not pay attention to it because they don't fully understand it. I'd be happy to engage with Val and help in any way that I can to make recommendations to the education, finance, and education committees, policy committees, to make sure that our special ed students are well supported. I've done that with seclusion and I've managed to make real change there. So happy to work with Val on that and be the squeaky wheel. I'm good at that.
Got it. Thank you.
Alexis has a question.
Yes, hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Senator Seeberger, for coming into the session today. It's always nice to get contact with the legislators. So my question for you is just about the seclusion piece. I had a chance to read over some of the notes, some of the concerns and the solutions or suggestions that came out of that work group. And I wasn't at the meeting where your son came, and so I'm just wondering, um, you know, if what your position is in terms of the changes that are being proposed. I'm getting the sense that they want to sunset seclusion, and so I want to know kind of where you stand with that.
Yeah, that's absolutely the push, and that's why I got involved in this particular issue. What happened in 2023 when I was a brand new legislator and things were happening super fast and super furious, we ended up including a provision within our education omnibus bill that bans seclusion up through grade 3. And Val came and met with me on that after the fact, and I said, we did what? Because to me, that was absolutely the wrong approach. I had a heck of a time dealing with anybody in the 2024 session to even engage in that conversation. MDE's position is that we need to eliminate seclusion in all grades by 2026. And I met with the commissioner on that issue, and right away in our conversation understood that he did not have a good grasp at all on this particular issue. He kept calling it exclusionary discipline. I said, this is not discipline, Commissioner Jett. This is a safety procedure used in emergency situations, and we need to get that clear right now. So my concern was that folks advocating on behalf of families had convinced certain legislators that we had to do away with the tool based on perceived misuse rather than address the misuse and really fully understand what seclusion was, what it was used for, what it wasn't used for. The advocates did a really nice job telling horror stories about kids being locked in closets, kids being held in seclusion for days with meals being withheld and then wetting their pants without getting a bathroom break. I mean, they painted this picture of a practice that is not what seclusion is in the state of Minnesota. And if that is happening, then that's absolutely contrary to the law. But that's kind of where it came from. And all of my sitting down and saying, that's not what happens. And my son needed seclusion from time to time. And it just fell on deaf ears. So again, this is emotional for me. This is my kid. So in 2025, I drafted a bill to completely repeal the ban because nobody was engaging with me on this. And I was like, well, screw it. If you're not going to talk to me about this, then I'm just going to, go my own way. And that finally got their attention. I managed to come up with a bill that I thought was a really good bill. And it worked some procedural safeguards into the IEP process. Seclusion up through grade 6 would only be allowed if it was part of the IEP. The IEP team had to include psychologist or counselor, somebody to, can't remember, it's not in front of me anymore, but I mean that to identify contraindications to seclusion had to be made available, notices in the parent's native language. There had to be oral interpretation, if necessary. There had to be explicit consent for seclusion in a separate consent form, whereas they needed to explicitly sign off on it. Every parent or caregiver that had decision-making authority for that child had to sign off explicitly. It couldn't be a, you don't respond, it becomes consent sort of a thing. We worked in language so that if something went through an administrative law process, a judge couldn't order seclusion overriding. I mean, it was a very comprehensive bill to ensure that the parents and caregivers had to see the seclusion room as a part of the consent process. So hopefully there would be some, as we all know, as educators, people learn in different ways. You can't just read a piece of paper and understand it. Let's walk and talk and let's see the seclusion room and understand what we're talking about. That was written into the bill. That bill passed the Senate. It faltered in the House. And the advocates were, I remember having very frustrating conversations with members of the House saying, number one, it wasn't heard in committee, and number two, seclusion harms children. We need to ban it. And I'm like, oh my God, have you not been listening to anything that I said? So that's my position. That's kind of a long, we're at the I've tried not to steer this working group. I wanted to have organic conversations, and I kind of left yesterday's meeting wondering how we're going to land this plane. But that is my position. That was a really long answer.
Can I just
Thanks.
follow up? Can I?
Yeah, because I want to say something too. Go ahead, Dr. Mann. It's good to see you on here as well.
So I'm sorry, I'm not all dressed yet. But I do want to say that I've worked in a setting for environment, and even in those environments, well, first of all, I look at seclusion as an alternative learning environment. And so I guess when the way that you're describing it is more like maybe one of those places you would find in a psych ward. I don't know, but um, I do think that seclusion is helpful for students, especially in emergency situations. And I would just like to have more, and because I appreciate that history, because you came in kind of after I started working in special education. And I know when I wasn't working in a setting for, we needed alternative learning environments for students that, removed them from the classroom. And I feel like that all went away. I remember when I was working at North High School, they called it the air room. And it worked. And for whatever reason, I think it was part of a seclusionary conversation. I wasn't, as involved in politics at that time. But um, and I know we don't have the time and the space in this forum, but I would love to talk more about this and ask more questions about how they're packaging seclusion. Because personally, as an advocate for those spaces, I see it as an alternative learning environment.
So Alexis,
I'll put my legislative assistant's contact information here in the chat. I can't talk and type at the same time and send it. Feel free to send him an email, get some time on my calendar. I'd be happy to talk more.
Thank you.
and thank you, Senator Seaberg, and thank you for the great questions on seclusion. I'm going to offer another option. We do have MASE members who are part of the working group, and I will connect with those, and maybe we can provide another venue for members who have questions about the working group's work in another forum. So. Great. Well, thank you, Senator Seaberger. We can let you go on your way. Again, appreciate your time. And as always, I really appreciate the work that we do together.
Thanks. Happy to continue the conversation and happy to join you all today.
Great. For folks, I do just have 2 more slides. So if we should have planned a little longer. I was really appreciative of all your questions. For folks that are willing to, I will just continue with the rest of the presentation. Okay, so Provide straightforward handouts. As I mentioned, we provide information for you to leave behind on the MASE platform during the MASE Day at the Capitol. But if you have any information about your program, it's also good to bring that and share with legislators. You know, a one-page handout is a really useful document to give them information. And then lastly, you know, as I mentioned earlier, follow up with the thank you note. Send them a handwritten thank you card thanking them for their time. It's a great way to build relationships with legislators. Just lastly, a couple things to remember. You know, I think you saw from Senator Seeberger, she's an ordinary person just like the rest of us who has kind of all the same life things happening to them that we do. And they have everyday experiences and responsibilities and concerns. It's good to try to connect throughout the year. So let's say you come to MASE Day at the Capitol, you sent them a thank you note afterwards. At the end of session, just email them, you know, and they may have never done anything related to MASE issues because they're not on the committee, but just send them a thank you note. Say, thank you for your work this legislative session. As always, I'm happy to be a resource for you if anything comes up related to special education and can help you navigate some information. Be patient, don't give up. You know, we had a big setback in 2023 on this issue of seclusion. Had I known Senator Seeberger had some different opinions, she was in a position to make some changes, it might have ended up different. Now there's some opportunity to get some things addressed. You also don't know what might seem like a simple interaction. It could have a big impact in the legislative process. And then I mentioned maintaining the relationship is important. It's not just one and done. Just quickly looking to 2026, the legislative session begins on February 17th. It is not a budget setting session and the budget outlook is not promising. While we have a budget surplus for this current budgeting period we're in the next several years, we have a $3 billion budget surplus deficit. So there are some really, probably some difficult decisions ahead relating to the state budget. MASE Day at the Capitol is March 4th. We also did schedule, and I'm sorry I didn't include it here, I think the date is February 27th for a virtual, you know, meeting to help you prepare and learn what to expect with MASE Day at the Capitol. You heard a lot about the seclusion working group. The role of that working group is to make recommendations to the legislature, and the legislature will have to advance legislation. So the working group won't make any decision on something that will become law immediately. It would still have to go through the legislative session in the form of a bill and would have to be passed and signed by the governor. There is a developmental delay working group, and we do have 2 MASE members on that working group to look at what would it mean if we extended the developmental delay category from age 7 to age 9. And then lastly, and then they have to provide recommendations to the legislature this next legislative session. And then lastly, there is a Blue Ribbon Commission on Special Education, and we have several MASE members on that. And that group is charged with finding $250 million in savings in special education. They do not have to have the recommendations to the legislature until next year, closer to the legislative session. So no decisions are going to be made on that. But if the working group does not come up with the recommendations to find $250 million in savings, the Commissioner of Education is directed to reduce special ed aid by a commensurate amount. So we are very closely watching the work of that working group and really concerned about that recommendation that will come forward. And then lastly, MASE is still finalizing their legislative priorities, but when that document is done, you will see that information in MASE in your mailbox. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the attendance today. It's nice to see so many people. The handout, the presentation I will have, we can send that out to you. I also have kind of a one-page document to help you kind of craft your elevator pitch that we will email to you as well. And I'm happy to stay on the line if anyone would like to chat and ask me some more questions about what they learned today. I'm going to stop recording. I don't know how to stop recording, so. Well, thanks everyone. I hope you have a good rest of your day.